over that, though.
The time is 7:31. I call the April 1st meeting of Yardley Borough Council to order, not an April Fool's joke. Please stand for the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. Manager Johnson.
Ms. Thompson, Ms. Siegel-Morris, Mr. Stump,
Present.
Ms. Scherer,
Present.
Mr. Carlson,
Present.
Mr. Feiner,
Present.
and Mr. Applebaum.
Here.
With 7 members present, we have a quorum. Community announcements. Does any member of council or the mayor have announcements about upcoming events going on in the borough?
You do.
Yes, Councilperson Scherer.
Okay. It's a little early. But it's never too early when the next meeting might be too close. Saturday, April 26th, Lake Afton Cleanup Day is being held. We will be celebrating Earth Day. So it's between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m. Meet right next to the church parking lot. Come in that way, or just look around and look for people that look familiar, or just ask anybody. We can all direct you in the right direction. Help us make Lake Afton look beautiful for spring and summer for everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other community announcements from the table first?
Yes, Madam President.
Yes, Councilperson Applebaum.
Thank you. I just came from a YBA, Yardley Business Association meeting. They're having a collaboration and connect with the YBA. This would be at the FC Works, 9 South Main Street on April 10th between 6 and 7:30 p.m. If you go to their website, yardleybusiness.com, you can RSVP. And second announcement is from Shirley Coursey, Executive Director of Gather Place. She asked me to mention that they're having a special celebration regarding the America's 250th anniversary. It's a special meeting because Gather Place was a recent recipient of some money and designation by the, I believe it was the Pennsylvania 250 Committee, and it's going to be on Saturday, April 12th, between 2 and 4 p.m. at Yardley Friends Meeting House, 65 North Main Street. And I'll just briefly tell you that see how Gather Place Museum connects with Yardley Borough to celebrate. So if residents or businesses have ideas, I think it would be a good idea to attend and share your ideas of how we can celebrate here in Yardley Borough for the 250th anniversary. Learn a little bit about the America 250 PA and Pennsylvania's plans for this milestone, and then hear more about what they're doing at the Gather Place. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other community announcements from the table first? Yes, Mayor Harding.
So going with Councilperson Sherritt's idea that it's never too early, April 30th, carry the load. Love to have everybody involved, so if you need to put in for a day off work, it is a Wednesday. It will be, hopefully you can walk with us, so it'll be starting at 1:30 in Washington Crossing and walking to Yardley Borough, and we would have you home by 4 o'clock.
Excellent.
More details to follow.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, last call for the table for community announcements.
Yep, on Saturday, April 19th, the Yardley Borough Parks and Rec Board is having their Easter egg hunt at 11 a.m. in Buttonwood Park by the cupola. There's no rain date for that. And then also registration is now open for our 2 races that Parks and Rec hosts this year. The main Memorial Day Main Street Mile, which is on Memorial Day, Monday, May 26th, and the Yardley 5K, which is Sunday, June 1st. Registration is now open at yardleyraces.com. What's exciting this year is all the proceeds from the races are going to be going toward upgrading and getting new equipment at the tot lot. So very excited about that. So if you want to come run with us, please sign up.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Any community announcements from the public this evening? Okay, Hearing none, we'll move on to public comment. This is the portion of the meeting where members of the public can address council on matters not on the agenda. We ask that you come forward, state your name and address, and keep your remarks to 3 minutes per item. Any public comment this evening?
Hi, good evening. Julie Passini, 132 South Main Street. I just wanted to update everybody on the Pennsylvania Birdtown signage that is actually sitting over here still on the chair. We met and kind of came up to a consensus for where we think both of these signs should be placed within the borough. I have that in writing, and I can also send it to somebody to kind of, so you have it in an email so that you can see the links on Google Maps. But basically, we're thinking about kind of at the southmost entrance to the borough by Yardley Commons. There's a sign there that says "Welcome to Yardley Borough," and that's where the Tree City sign is at. I think that Jared had mentioned as well. In addition to that, we've come to an agreement that the second sign should be near the intersection of Dolington and North Main over there, where the duck statue is at. And there's also a number of other signs there. I think there's like a Rotary sign and another potentially a Tree City sign as well.
Yep.
Yeah, so those are our two locations that we would kind of like to advertise to you for consideration. My question would be, I guess, is do we need to fill out a formal permit for that?
No, they're the borough signs, so we can have our public works contractor put them up as long as council is okay with those locations. I'm okay because I know where those signposts are, giving you consensus this evening, but I'm also okay if anyone on council feels like they would like to see renderings and Google Map pins and decide at our next meeting. Does anyone have a strong opinion to wait or to give consensus tonight?
I'm good with consensus.
Yeah, move forward.
Give us consensus.
I consent.
Excellent. So you are good to go, and I will have Manager Johnson reach out to you, and we have the sign, so we can go ahead and do that, unless there's a specific post you'd like them on, but I think we'll just go with the one that the
Whatever
town is
you would
on.
recommend. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment this evening? All right, nice and easy. Thank you. We'll move on to consideration of the consent agenda dated April 1st. It includes item A, approval of the minutes dated March 18th, 2025, event permit for Memorial Day Parade, 52625 Main Street, event permit for Music Off Main, various dates from 5/31 to 9/13/25 in Buttonwood Park, event permit for LGBTQ plus Pride Month celebration on 6/3/2025 at Borough Hall in front of the building, event permit for Vault Brewing Pig Roast and Car Show, 6/14/25 at 19 West College. I'd ask that that item be removed to be considered separately. And item F, proposal for engineering services for FEMA-funded elevation projects for 119 South Bell Avenue and 35 Brown Street. Are there any other requests to remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve A through D and F.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion was made by Councilperson Scherer, seconded by Councilperson, I'll give it to Siegel Morris. Any discussion from council on these items? Any discussion from the public? Hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. We'll separately now consider event permit for Vault Brewing Pig Roast and Car Show for 6/14/25 at 19 West College Avenue. We received an email from a resident regarding this event permit application, just questioning change in business name and whether this was still allowable under the accessory use for the building that had previously been granted by the zoning hearing board. We received this email just a few hours ago, and so I'm going to ask if our solicitor has had time to look, and if not, I would request we table until our next meeting.
Yes, thank you. So I did receive a copy of the email. I had a brief opportunity to review it. It would appear that this use as a private event space is not permitted in the industrial district. However, I'd have to take a look at the decision from the zoning hearing board back from 2019, as well as have a discussion with the owner of the property about what the current use is and what the change in use has been. But it does appear that this wouldn't be permitted unless there was a variance previously obtained. Doesn't really affect the event permit in the sense that right now they're not currently held in violation. They haven't received any type of notice. So you can certainly proceed on it if you desired.
Given that it's not until June and we could comfortably still approve even at our next meeting or 2 or 3, I would prefer that we table this event permit until we have more information. Do we have to make a motion to table, or we just don't vote on it this evening?
Because it's on the agenda, I would just make a motion to table it till the next meeting.
Is there a motion to table item E?
So moved.
Is there a second? Motion to table was made by Councilperson Carlson, seconded by Councilperson Siegel Morris. Any discussion from council?
Just to kind of get a little more insight, and I want to give you a chance for the solicitor to look at it more thoroughly, but as I recall, that zoning decision said that they could use this space as they were using it at the time as a smokehouse, and then when they had special events, they had to make a request. I believe that was in that decision.
Yeah, so the decision, my understanding, and again, I just got this right before I left for the day to come here, was, they were asking for a barbecue restaurant, which wasn't a permitted use in the industrial district. I know they received relief for that, and that's why I indicated I'll have to look at the confines of the zoning decision to see what all it included.
And so the premise for this question is, well, if they're not actually using it for that use anymore, but they're still having the events, is that now a new situation, or is that like a subset of the old situation? Is that the question?
Yeah, that's basically the analysis, because under the zoning ordinance, a private event space is not a permitted use within the industrial district. So if they haven't received prior relief that incorporates this use, they would have to obtain a new variance for the private event space.
But the idea that we could vote on it anyway, just as a standalone event, what's the basis of that decision if it's not approved for an event space? It's just like any other event, when it's like event to event, as opposed to an event space, which would essentially be approved for that use without.
Yeah, and that's why I indicated if you desired to vote on it this evening, you certainly could.
In other words, if they said we want to do 2 or 3 events a year, we'll just, we will just ask each time. We could do that, and that would be.
Yeah, I mean, the question becomes, has the underlying primary use of the property changed? If it has, and they haven't received relief for it, they would need a variance for a use.
Okay.
Thank you. Great questions. Are there any further questions on this item? Hearing none, I will call the question again. This is to table. All those in favor, oh, I'm sorry. Does the public have any comment this evening on this matter? Yes.
I'm just curious about why it's not, just for my knowledge, why is it not, I guess Jordan's talking about this.
Sure.
Paul, 73 North Delaware. I'm just curious why it's not why you're not allowed to have an event in that space. Maybe I'm just not caught up.
Yes, it's a long history. I don't know if you'd like to maybe give the abridged version.
Yeah, so just, broadly speaking, like a higher overview of it is, each property is located in a certain district of the borough. There's then a zoning ordinance that sets forth what specific uses are allowed in each district. This particular property is in the industrial district, and an entertainment space or a private event space is not a permitted use. So in order to have that as a primary use of a property, you'd have to go before the zoning hearing board and get a variance. So that's really the issue. Has the primary use of the property changed such that it's not permitted?
But you're saying it's a private event space?
That's the information that we received in an email, and that's why I indicated we have to look into it further to see, has the primary use of the property actually changed?
They're hosting a private ticketed event, so it's not open to the public.
Okay. So then why does it even need to be permitted then if it's a private event? That's what we're saying?
Because they went to the zoning hearing board, and as part of the,
Yeah, and you're looking at two different things. If they're just holding a one-off event, you can certainly come in and get a special events permit. The email we received indicated that the primary use of this property at all times is now as an event space.
Understood. And they own the building, or it's owned by somebody else?
They do not own the building.
No, they don't.
Yeah, I think it's, these are, what I look to you for clarity on is, and the.
Just seems
the point that
confusing.
you're bringing up is a really good point, is that, so if somebody wants to have a one-off event, they can go through, get an event permit, get it approved, have a one-off event. If they want to have that twice a year, they can do it twice a year. At what point does it become
zoning, where it's the use of the property is now an event space, is it the point where they don't want to go through council each time to have an event? Or is there some threshold somewhere that we don't know about?
The threshold is, what is the primary use of the property? So is the property open for anything other than private events? If the only thing that's property is being operated for is special events or private events, they need to go through zoning to make sure that that use is permitted. If it's just, a restaurant that operates as a restaurant, or a coffee shop that operates as a coffee shop, and they want to hold, a one-off special event, they would get an event permit. But if it's the entire use of the property and that's their sole use, that becomes the primary use of the property and you need relief.
But what about a place like, Charles is great, but what about a place like FC Works? They hold private events all the time. Do they have to go through a permitting process? Different zone? So just because it's in a...
Above Pretty Bird.
Yeah, so just because it's in a different area, you're able to have an event there, but you can't have something in the industrial district?
Well, then you also get into issues of, whether you're blocking traffic, whether you're blocking the sidewalks, and whether you trigger the need for a special event permit.
Understood. I guess maybe because it's a car show, there's like more things happening outside of the building than actually in the building, potentially? But,
So we don't have answers to all
Okay.
those, and that's why when
All right.
we vote as a board, we like to have a robust understanding of the issue at hand. And because there are some unanswered questions and we have plenty of time, we're not inhibiting anything because this is not until mid-June. We just are going to table it and collect all the answers to that and get a better understanding.
cool. Yeah, I was just curious. It seemed like a kind of a wacky thing.
Yeah, absolutely wacky. We have lots of wacky here. Thank you. All right, any other comments or questions from the public on this? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. All right, moving on to the police chief's report. We have Sergeant Golden here tonight, and he is our acting head of our police force at this time, so thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Madam President. For the month of March 2025, the Yardley Borough Police Department answered 739 calls for service, which is up from the same time last year at 573. We issued 6 parking tickets. We conducted 94 traffic stops. We had issued 54 citations, investigated 8 accidents, 0 DUIs, and 2 arrests. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Moving on to the finance report, you have before you the April 1st finance report for consideration. Unless there are any questions, comments, or concerns, it will be accepted by consensus. Okay, manager's report, please.
This is the March review. We had a workers' comp audit this month, and everything was fine. We received our liquid fuels allocation in the amount of $68,899.41. Real estate transfer tax, this was actually for sales in February, was a little low, $3,038. I do anticipate this month being a lot bigger because we did have a big sale of a property. Second quarter trash statements have been mailed to all the residents. Portenoff has sent the initial letter for collection of delinquent trash. That went out just this week, so I'm sure we're going to start getting some phone calls. We already started receiving some tax payments from Portenoff for their collection efforts as well. I sent out the required PennDOT notices to North Main Street residents that are affected by the Phase 3 sidewalks. We're waiting on a few residents to give us these letters back, so I'm going to start emailing them and give them a form again, and hopefully that'll get them to respond. We needed to order some more stop signs. Some of them were weathered, some of them got hit. I posted on Facebook that we have some openings on some committees. It was Park and Rec and Planning Commission. We did receive one application for a potential Planning Commission member, so we hope to have a future appointment on a future agenda. And that's my report.
Thank you. Engineers report, please.
Thank you. We've issued our engineer's report to council. I'm available, if there's any questions, we could go through them. I did want to give council update on the North Main Street Phase 3 sidewalk project. I was out for our last council meeting in March, but since then we did receive PennDOT review comments on March 19th. We are scheduled to resubmit to PennDOT on or before April 15th. With PennDOT's 30-day review cycle, we're optimistic for review by May 15th. If everything is in order, we would hope to be out to bid in June, open up the bids the last week of June so we could issue a recommendation for council's July 1st meeting. As before, once we get closer, we'll be further coordinating with PICO as well. Are there any questions on North Main Street? No? Okay. Also, within the engineer's report, we did update the grant list that are available. One item, there is the DCED Watershed Restoration Grant, the Greenways Trails and Recreation Program, the Floodway Mitigation Program, the PA Small Water and Sewer, as well as the Yardley grants. Those do have matches, except for the Yardley grant from years past. Additionally, the DCED Multimodal grant is now open as well. That's due in the end of July, I believe, and that's zero match again. So if there are no further questions, that concludes my report.
Any questions for Mr. Foley this evening? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Solicitor's report, please.
No report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor's report.
No report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. On to council member reports, starting with Councilperson Siegel Morris.
No report this evening.
Councilperson Finer.
Sure. Two things. I'll just touch on the sidewalk for a moment because Public Works did meet with the engineer to discuss the moving things along, and the back and forth with PennDOT is always the area that we never know what's going to happen with that. But I'm pretty satisfied. It's going through a few rounds, but after speaking to the engineer, I think you're doing a great job with it, and we're in the small back and forth, and everything's looking good. So I'm hopeful that we'll get final approval at this next round. And, if all goes well, which we hope, we should be under construction this summer. So that's the idea. And I'm, feeling good about it. And in terms of Judy's Garden, I'll just update that we are trying to get the statue that the person, Mr. Rutterow, who donated the property to us, also purchased a beautiful statue called the Dancer, and we're trying to figure out how to get that there. But we've got to figure out, and I've been working with Manager Johnson to figure out how to deal with the sewer construction that's going to be happening there, and how we order that in such a way that we don't do work and then have to redo it. So you may see a statue show up there one day soon. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Councilperson Carlson.
Nothing to report on general government, but relative to this, I'm the liaison to the sewer board, and they presented to us about the upcoming construction last month. It looks like they're probably going to go out to bid late April, early May, so construction will probably be in the summer timeframe is when they'll start the construction, and it'll go on for about a year. But that's where they are. That's all I had.
Thank you. Councilperson Applebaum.
Yes, the EAC during a planting dug up dinosaur bones along River Road. April Fools! Just kidding, no report.
I knew that was coming.
Actually no report?
Yeah, actually no report.
no.
April
Double
Fools!
April Fools.
That's April Fools too!
Councilperson Scher.
No report this evening.
Thank you. And Councilperson Stump.
Yeah, just wanted to say, because I heard through the grapevine a few people were asking, I've interviewed half of the applicants for the Elevation Resident Advisory Board. So we'll be completing the rest of those here in the next few weeks. And we'll also interview the applicant for planning, Paula, that you sent this past week. So we will hopefully have those to present before council. I was going to say in April, but it is April. So hopefully by the next weekend in April. April snuck up on me a little bit. And that's all I have to report this evening.
Thank you. We'll move on to discussion items. I just have a minor update yesterday was our Chief Kelly, Chief of Police, last official day. And we said our formal remarks for him at our last meeting, but we are aware that the public is wondering what's next for the borough. I just wanted to let you all know I asked Councilperson Siegel Morris, who has public safety working session at our next meeting, to yield her time to me to discuss our search committee and our transition planning. So we'll do that at our next meeting. I have asked 5 people to serve on a search and transition committee. They have all said yes. I will share that list with council at our next meeting and get your consensus on those names. I just want to tell everyone that we're not rushing into anything. We have rich history for our police force here, and we're going to take our time in considering applicants and what's next for our police force. And in the meantime, Sergeant Golden has served as head of our police force anytime the chief has been away in the past, and he has done a wonderful job, and we are very confident in his abilities to lead us in this transitional period, and we're grateful to him for his willingness to do that. So more news soon, but rest assured we are in good hands, and we're excited about the future of Yardley Borough. All right, other business. Vote to advertise short-term lodging ordinance. I will turn over to Councilperson Carlson.
Thank you. The goal tonight is to get to the next step on this process of short-term rentals and to get approval from council to advertise the ordinance in the near term. What I want to do, though, is quickly just go through a little history, particularly for people who are here tonight or watching tonight who didn't watch in previous times, just a little bit of history, and then what has changed and where are we now. We started on this back in September of 2023, looking at short-term rental regulations as part of the C&ED committee. We looked at comparisons to other boroughs and townships, what they're doing. Got some input from Planning Commission about a year ago. And then we had a very detailed working session last June and then in September where we talked in detail about what we wanted in an ordinance and agreeing that the need for an ordinance. First draft was done in December. In January, we made the key decision in January is that to move forward with an ordinance, but this ordinance is constructed so it only applies to the commercial zones. So at this time, this does not apply to the residential zones. There's been a lot of information out there that thinks it does. It does not. But I'll go through that in detail in a minute. The Planning Commission got another look at our changes to the ordinance, primarily around the commercial zones only approach. They had some inputs that we fixed in the minor little things that we fixed in the second round. So what I want to go through is to just outline what's in the proposed ordinance. But before I do, next page, please. That wasn't the next page. That's the next page. The one with the map is page 2. Okay. Just so everybody knows, everybody on council knows this, but I apologize, this isn't a great map. But what is the commercial zones? There's 2 zones, C1 and C2. And if you start down by the river, start at the Yardley Inn, and you work your way up, you see that purple zone, that's a C2 zone, that's a commercial zone, kind of where the car repair shops are and the...
and if anyone would like a copy of this map, we're happy to send it to you. Just send us an email. Yeah. Yes, I saw. Yes.
Yeah. And then the commercial zone basically comes up Afton, from the creek to Afton, which is basically the gas station, and then CVS and the bakery. Those are all commercial zones. And the other side of the street, where there's some homes there. There's one operating Airbnb there in that commercial zone. And then it works its way up to Canal Street. And the main commercial area is the orange that you see there, the whole orange part. And that's basically from the main intersection, Starbucks area, all the way down to the firehouse, basically. And you go basically 2 lots deep on the west side of the road, and on the east side is just Canal Street primarily. So that's what encompasses our commercial district. The rest of these other districts are various residential districts, and obviously there's an industrial district too, which I chopped off because the map would be too small, so I didn't include the whole town. There is one other small commercial district that doesn't show on here, and that is up where Calico Corners is, where the pink building is. There's not going to be an Airbnb there. There's no homes there, but that is technically commercial as well. So that defines what the commercial zone is. So what we're talking about tonight in this proposed ordinance is to allow under certain, first of all, right now, Airbnbs can operate in that zone. That's what our ordinance is today. They can today, but we don't, what we're trying to do is put an ordinance in that controls it, because there's nothing about parking in there, there's nothing about noise, there's nothing about many different regulations that come along with Airbnbs that you're going to see in a minute. So anyhow, but they're not allowed anywhere else in the borough, and this ordinance keeps it that way. Okay, now we'll go to page 2, which starts with key license agreements. That's it. Thank you. The way this ordinance is going to be is a separate chapter. It's going to be chapter 14. And the first few sections are all the whereas, why are we doing this kind of stuff. But then when you get into the actual meat of the licensing requirements, we're going to have an annual licensing process for short-term lodging. Inspections will be required at the initial application and then annually thereafter. The key thing is on this first application, you're going to have to, if I was submitting, let's say I'm an owner, I would submit both a floor plan and a plot plan required. You have to identify all the bedrooms, you have to identify all the various safety equipment that's in there, and you have to identify parking spots. And then parking will be limited to the available off-street parking on the property and will be designated on each license. So I can't say, it's not so many per bedroom or whatever, because it depends on where it's located and whether or not it can accommodate 2 extra parking spaces, or 3 maybe one could have 4, whatever. But those will be designated. When you go in, you're going to get your license approved, and your license approved for 2 cars, 2 bedrooms, 6 people, or whatever, so it'll be all defined on your application. You also then obviously have to have at least $500,000 minimum property liability insurance, proof that you paid your Bucks County lodging room taxes, well, PA sales and use, the privilege taxes. These are all things that came out of our working sessions, by the way. We decided to have a maximum of 10 STL, short-term lodging licenses permitted for year 1, and then we'll review that once a year to see whether or not it makes sense to allow more. And we won't grant them for abutting properties, so you don't end up with a whole street, so we won't have abutting properties. And we'll annually review to determine the quantity of units permitted for the following year. So this is a conservative approach, but some of those things that you can imagine in there are very important to have, which we don't have today. And it's going to make it more controllable. Next page, please. Additional key requirements. These are kind of unique to special things that happen. If it's located within an area where there's a homeowners association or a condo association, and there's documentation in that homeowners association that excludes short-term lodging, then obviously that trumps it, and you can't have it there. If it's located in the floodplain area, which a lot of this is in the floodplain, so we're calling out the very specific floodplain-related instructions have to be posted in a certain place inside the unit, so visitors know what they're supposed to do. So the owner's responsible for communicating all that, and it has to be in the rental agreement. And then a local contact person, well, either the owner, if the owner lives nearby, or if the owner does not live by, they have to have a local person, manager, within 20 miles and or 1 hour distance of the rental unit. And then they have to maintain a ledger detailing the length of stay for all visitors, and they have to provide that to council. And then, most importantly, when they apply for the next year, that's one of the things you look at to make sure there weren't any violations of the requirements. Okay, go forward. Unfortunately, he's got a little out of order, but that's okay. That one, okay. So those are the requirements we were talking about. Now, there's 2 different types of short-term lodging. One is a specific bedroom accommodation. What that means is that's when I own a home and I have a couple bedrooms and I want to allow people, I want to rent out those couple of bedrooms, but I'm going to be in the home at the same time. So I'm there. Under that scenario, where the owner's occupying, a minimum stay is 24 hours. Maximum stay, of course, is 30 days. This whole ordinance applies to rentals under 30 days. Because once you get over 30 days, that's a whole different thing. Those are
It's not a short-term
It's
rental.
not a short-term rental. So this whole topic is under 30 days. So that's specific bedroom accommodation. The second type, which is most prevalent of what everybody's talking about, is most likely, is an entire home rental in the commercial zone. And so this draft ordinance calls for a 2-night minimum, so you have to have a 2-night minimum and a maximum of 30 days. So in the commercial zones, and then I just added to reemphasize in the third bullet that entire home rental in residential or industrial zones does not allow for short-term lodging in those two areas. So we're just talking in that orange part I showed you on the previous map. Okay. I just wanted to pull out one other thing. Go forward, please. Keep going. One more. So that I didn't touch on. Yep, that's one. There, stop for a second. I forgot to discuss the very last bullet on there. In the ordinance, which is 14 pages long, the last 3 pages of it are sections 4, 10, 11, and 12, which is a detailed process for suspension, revocation, or non-review of license. In other words, we looked at what other townships have done and have worked with, how to deal with if someone violates the and doesn't and allows more people in, or all of a sudden there's 10 cars there or something. There's a very detailed process of how quickly you can react to that and get your license pulled, and then what you have to do to get your license back. There's a whole suspension and you can't have a renewal if you have violations. It's very tight. And what we did is we took that from Lower Makefield primarily, that's been dealing with these for many years and has tough language and has built tough language in there, and we left that in there, say if it works for somebody else, it can work for us. So that's the other meat that's in there that is something that we don't have as much teeth in today to enforce violations of some of these things. So with that background, I think now is the time to move forward. There is going to be one more step. I'd like to get council's approval tonight to advertise, and then concurrently with that, we're going to get inputs still from Bucks County Planning Commission. They'll look over our ordinance as well to see if there's any insight that they want to provide to us based on other towns. So, but then once we get that from Bucks County Planning Commission, then we'll do the advertising, and then for a certain period of time, so that everybody can see the whole details of it, and then vote on it in probably May, hopefully. So do you want me to make a motion, or?
Sure.
I'd like to make a motion to go forward with the permission to advertise short-term lodging, new short-term lodging ordinance, new chapter 14 for the Yardley Borough.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion was made by Councilperson Carlson, seconded by Councilperson Finer. Have discussion from the table first.
Yeah, I think something that's just important to note for the public, because this might be a little bit confusing when we're saying commercial zone and then talking about homes. So something that's important to note is, because we are an old town, even older than the United States, our zoning can get a little funky. For example, and Councilman Finer, you and I discovered this through the process and even confirmed with Manager Johnson, the shopping center where Bagel Train and the Yardley Pharmacy are located is zoned low-density residential. So there couldn't be an Airbnb in any of those spaces. Not that there would be anyway. But then there's also several homes within the borough that are zoned commercial. A couple properties on Afton Avenue, and every single property on Canal Street behind this building from Afton to College is zoned commercial. So in theory, without this ordinance, if we just kept with what we're doing now, every single one of those owners could open up their home as a short-term rental. We actually had one open up in Afton in this year, and it's owned by an LLC. We don't know who the owners are. It's managed by a company that manages thousands of these. There was absolutely no process for permitting, applications, nothing with the borough. They just opened it because it's in the commercial zone, which you couldn't even open a business in the commercial zone without going through a process and permits. And so really what this does is it just makes it to where they're treated like any other business and being treated fairly, I think. And just to reiterate, if you're in a residential zone, which most of us are in, that doesn't mean there's going to be one popping up near you. I know we're all getting emails even during the meeting saying, vote no on this. It's not on the table. We're not voting no, we're not voting yes. We tabled that back in January. So that's not even an option at this point. And I apologize, that probably makes it less exciting.
And I wanted, just want to commend you and all the work that you've done on this, because this was like, this is a long, there's a lot went into this, and I think it's come up in a very good place. And I think for the clarity, some people might have the question, I wonder if you could just explain to the public, the existing ones, how do they fit into this? So do they count towards the 10? Do they have to meet any of this? Or are they grandfathered to do their own thing and keep doing it?
Technically, I think, Solicitor, correct me if I'm wrong, they would be grandfathered in. But I'm hopefully that we can work with those owners, and they'll want to do what's in here and make, obviously the two that are operating today are operating in the right zones, so that's okay. But they probably don't have all these details in there and all the postings and stuff that we call out in this ordinance in there, but hopefully we can, work with them and they'll find that reasonable and do that. Am I correct from that perspective?
Yeah, I agree with that statement.
Yeah.
Would they count towards the 10,
So they wouldn't be subject to the license requirements, so they would continue to exist as they have, as being grandfathered, but obviously they should get priority if they apply and try to bring it into conformity.
It would be in their interest then to do so, because then they would actually, since they'd be part of the 10, there'd be less other ones that could come in.
Correct.
Sure.
Excuse me, question? if I may?
Yes.
Sorry, may I borrow that? Sorry, you're great, Bupon, thank you. Hello. Okay, so my question, my interest from community and economic development is, because I just saw some folks from Visit Bucks County, in the permitting, is there a provision for them to pay a hotel tax?
Yeah, it's required before they have to show proof that they've already paid it before they apply.
Okay, and then those that are grandfathered, are they required to pay?
Yeah, they're required to pay.
We don't know if they are, but they are required.
Again, two different.
We don't know if they have. We don't know if they have paid it, but they're required to pay it.
Oh, okay, will that be something that's required moving forward, or because they're grandfathered, we can't, there's no oversight on that?
Well, they're already required to pay it pursuant to separate regulations that aren't within Yardley Borough's jurisdiction.
Okay, that explains that. Thank you, appreciate it. Good job, Don, thank you.
Yeah, I especially like the map. We got an email last week from somebody who learned about this ordinance from Reddit. So I went on Reddit, I read a couple of interesting threads with a lot of incorrect information in them. And one of them was someone lived in Yardley Commons and they thought they lived in the commercial district. So this map will hopefully be helpful to them. And we really can't even laugh at that, because how would somebody know? Unless you have a map, and the map doesn't necessarily follow the lines you would think it would follow. So anybody who, I think we should have this online somewhere so that people can access it, and because a lot of our ordinances refer to different zones in the borough, and so if you don't know where you are, it's difficult to determine which ordinance applies to you. So we even gleaned some things from this process that are helpful outside of the short-term lodging ecosystem. So thank you, Don. Any other questions or comments from council before I turn it over to the public? All right, questions from the public? Yes, from the back.
Hello. Brad Levine, 202 Yardley Commons. I have a couple questions. So that was a great proposal. I mean, I almost bought it for a minute. I really did. But I still, for the third time, want to ask, or get a good answer to, why aren't we considering prohibiting these altogether, except maybe for the ones that are grandfathered? So that's one question I have. Another question I have is, this is more of a comment, but I've done a little bit of homework on these, and I know, I know legislatively, I know a common practice is sort of the divide and conquer thing. Soft sell the proposal everybody can get behind, and then bring up something less desirable later, like moving them into residential areas. And one of the meetings I was at, people who were on both sides pretty much seemed to agree that allowing them in commercial zones is just going to pave the way to allow them in residential zones. And I think it's probably, at least for me, it's probably better to nip this in the bud and just prohibit them altogether. I think that'll prevent this from being a problem. The three that are in the, excuse me, I'm a little nervous, but the three that are in the, that are currently within Yardley Borough, obviously I would think would be grandfathered, which, having looked at least two of them are investment properties. I don't know if any of them are actually owners in the area. I don't see how that really benefits Yardley, other than to drive housing prices up and to drive more non-residents into the town. What else did I want to ask? I'm sorry. I'm trying to fit a lot in all at once in my 3-minute allotment. So let's just say, play devil's advocate and say this is enacted as just within the commercial zone. What's to stop somebody later on down the road from complaining or even suing in order to get them enacted in the residential zones? Again, it's another case for maybe nipping this in the bud and just prohibiting these altogether. Just one other comment I wanted to make is I've done a fair amount of research on this, and ironically, somebody actually on Reddit started a thread in the Philly subreddit about 3 weeks ago, and the general consensus it was a pretty active thread. The general consensus is that Airbnbs really screw up neighborhoods. And me personally, I don't want to see that happen to Yardley. I hear from people all the time how it screws up the Poconos, and that was even talked about on Reddit too. So I just don't see any good that can come of this. And that pretty much wraps up my comments. But if you can answer them, or if anybody has anything to say as to why we can't just prohibit them and prevent this from being a problem altogether, I'd love to hear it.
Sure, I'm happy to provide a response from my own viewpoint. Why not prohibit them? I think that the ones that we have are additive to the town. I think our businesses enjoy having people visiting and going to the shops and going to the restaurants. We haven't had any issues with any of the ones that are existing in the commercial district. And one of them, in fact, I don't think is suitable for anyone to live in full term. It's a studio where the only bed is in a loft that doesn't have a wall or a door.
One on Canal.
Right. So I don't think they're a bad thing. I think they're a good thing. I can't speak for everyone on council. I do, and as we've said many times before, I think when you buy a house in the commercial district, especially across from Wawa or across from Borough Hall, you recognize that you're not living in a neighborhood like some of other folks up here might live in. In terms of will this then bleed into residential areas, we have made a commitment as this council to collect public opinion via a survey, a widespread public opinion, before we consider that. I'm firmly going to stand on that, that we will do that. So I don't know what else to say about that point. We committed to collecting public opinion, and if we want to proceed with moving this into the residential zone, we will do that. And if the public says we don't want this, then we're not going to do it. And then your last point was about could we be sued into bringing it into the residential zones? I've done a lot of research as well on this, and I have not found a single piece of case precedent that has happened, and I don't even know how they would make that argument. So I feel good about what we're doing here. Again, we are not allowing something that doesn't already exist. We are regulating something that already exists to protect you and to protect everyone else who lives here by making an owner do all of these things, whereas they currently don't need to do any of them. And I think that that's a good thing in this case. Does anyone else want to respond to any of those questions?
Just to add too, I think it's important to remember, we all live here, over 2,000 people living here, and we all have different opinions. And our job here is to try to strike a balance. So you have people saying, well, you're actually the only one that I've heard say, I just don't want any of these at all completely banned. Okay, two. But we hear a lot from people who say you don't want them in residential areas, but it's okay in commercial. And then we hear from people who want them, everywhere. So I think you have to look at that we're trying to strike a balance and be reasonable. And while there are issues that Airbnbs bring, they also bring benefits. So we're trying to strike a balance, and I think we came to a pretty good balance here.
So what's our recourse if this doesn't work out? And most likely it won't historically.
Well, this is a controlled system where they have to operate in a way that works for the borough, right? So if there are complaints or they don't follow the rules, then they lose their license. So we have control over making sure that they're good players in the system. Does that make sense? That's actually beneficial to us.
They're suspended.
Because what if they just, somebody could buy a house, rent it out to bad tenants, right? And we have no recourse. We just have our noise ordinance and things like that, but we don't have the level of control. So an argument can be made. I don't want to get deep into the woods on it, but that this gives us a lot of control over the situation to create a situation that works.
But then they change the LLC and they're a whole new company and they're a whole new entity, so they can do whatever they want all over again.
If they're not licensed by us, we have to approve the license, right?
But they can do that.
With us, we're not going to approve the license.
And also they can do that now. So if we do nothing, they are allowed by right in the commercial zone based on our zoning law, just like they're banned by right in the residential zone right now. So what we're actually doing is putting more restrictions. So, again, I totally hear what you're saying about you don't want them at all, but this ordinance actually moves the needle closer to what you want than what we currently have now. Because what we currently have now is no regulation.
Right.
In commercial
Thinking
zones.
if we prohibit them and, still allow 3 licenses to go forth and not add more for the ones that are grandfathered, because I can see this being an incremental thing is,
Sure.
10 licenses, 20 licenses, 50 licenses. There have been a few laws struck down because governmental body tried to limit the number of licenses, and the court said you can't do that.
I'll let someone else speak in just a moment, but there's a supply and demand here too. We're not going to give out 50 licenses in our commercial district. There aren't 50 homes in our commercial district.
Yes.
Well, you're laughing, but let's be reasonable when we're making public comment, okay? That's not going to happen in Yardley Borough. And this board, it has been reasonable. We've taken 2 years to take this baby step, and we are being very thoughtful, in my opinion. So you asked for why aren't we prohibiting altogether? A couple of us responded. Thank you for your comments. I will hear from the next member of the public.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mansell.
Paul Menzel, 73 North Delaware. So I am, just for the record, am in favor of keeping Airbnbs as well as putting in the regulations. I think they're great. One thing I didn't see up there, which I was wondering, was are you able to do multi-units? So like if somebody was to renovate a building and convert it to say 3 or 4 apartments, obviously that could kind of spin out of control. So is there something in that about that or no?
I don't think so.
What's that?
I don't think there is.
I'm not sure I
So
understand.
if it's one
Do you
property.
mean-
So you're saying
You're
there's
talking about like a person buying a house, making 4 apartments, now it's 4 Airbnb
correct.
units.
Correct. Yeah, correct. But it would be one owner under one property.
Let me
So
tell
would you need 4 separate licenses?
No.
Or, like, I'm just trying to get,
Yeah, that would count for the licenses.
yeah. Oh, so you would need to do 4. Okay. I was just making sure that's something that is outlined in there, because I think that could
That
be
defines.
a loophole,
I didn't go through all the
right?
detail, but it defines
Oh.
what a dwelling is, it defines what a dwelling unit is.
Okay.
In the ordinance. And
Got it.
defines what a bedroom is too.
Oh, okay. So if I was to buy a house and then converted it into 4 individual units, and then converted each one into individual Airbnbs, it would be individual.
They're abutted, right?
Yeah, that's what yeah, so if they're abutted, then you can't do a multi-unit, I guess, is what,
Not under one license.
what'd you say?
For licenses.
It would be 4 separate licenses.
Could you get
Yeah,
4
but then-
licenses because they're abutted?
Yeah, so you would only get 1 license for the unit.
Because we have some properties like that now. We have
Yeah.
properties that are already
Yeah, they're-
in
yeah,
the
that's-
commercial zone,
that's
and they're
what- yeah.
long-term rentals. And there's like, for example, the building on Afton by the canal. Not trying to single them out, it's just an
Yeah.
example. I think there's 5 or 6 apartments in there that are rented on a long-term basis. So I think what you're asking is, what if that owner decided, oh, I want to make one of those an Airbnb and then keep the other 5 long-term?
Yeah, I
I think it's a great question.
Yeah, I was more just making sure that they could not do that, because as we all know, we're in a severe like housing shortage in general. And the last thing we would want to be doing is pulling away from long-term rentals to create short-term rentals. So if you have that one multi-unit, that I was thinking that exact one, I was like, oh, this guy could probably make more money. It's right on the canal, could convert all of them to short-term rentals, but I guess it's in there. So just wanted to make sure it was.
It's not commercial anyway.
Well, no, it's right on Afton.
That building is zoned commercial.
Yeah, that building would be zoned commercial. And then my other question was, you have to file for the permit after you already own the house, right? So it's not like an investor can come in, file for a permit, see if they get it, and then purchase the house, correct?
You have to be the owner.
Yeah, you have to.
Okay, so you have to purchase the house first, all right?
So, yeah.
Okay, great. That's all.
There's a risk, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. That's it.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Colin Burke, 57 South Main Street, right across the road there. This is my first time doing this, a little nervous.
Oh, don't be nervous. We welcome, even if you hate all of us, we welcome your
No,
public
no,
comment.
no. I like to think I'm a very empirical thinker, and I'm just a long-term renter. I've been renting for 18 years. A lot of my money's disappeared and gone into somebody's pocket. You know, I don't own a house. So I'm just kind of putting in my 2 cents that from the surface, it feels like Airbnb is kind of an affront to people who are long-term rentals. I feel like things like that, as they come up in scale, it would increase our rents at a higher rate. About this particular framework, I don't know how much public comment came in before tonight. This is my first time coming to talk on this kind of thing. Just wanted to put in my voice and just say at surface, I don't like the idea of Airbnbs coming in and getting I don't know, I guess it's not a red carpet. You know, you've given them a fair framework, and I've listened to the comments tonight, and I think that a lot of effort's been put into it. I guess I just wanted to put in my voice and say, you know, long-term renter, and as a long-term renter, I think that Airbnb is a threat to people like me living in the borough.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments this evening? Yes.
Hello, my name is Sharon Abbott. I'm from 39 Lookover Lane. First time visitor. I just wanted to say, thank you. I just want to say thank you very much for listening to people's opinions and tabling the residential, short-term housing in the residential areas. I really appreciate pausing that and taking a look at what the community feels and wants. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that, and just to express my opinion that in the future, some of the reasons why I oppose it isn't just because of the things you hear, like the trash and the noise and things like that, but I bought my home to raise my family in a residential area, and I don't want that to change. And I really think that short-term housing in the residential areas will greatly diminish the quality of life of the neighborhoods. And I don't want my neighborhood to change. I have great neighbors. They like my children, and we have fun. And I just don't want transient people coming in and out where I don't feel like my family can just hang out and be free just at a whim. You know, I don't want to have to be cautious, like, who are they? Okay, kids, come on inside. You know, I don't want that. I love how Yardley is. I think it's a fabulous place to live. And, you know, being in the commercial zone, okay, it could add value, and there's rules and regulations, which I think are important, and I agree with that. But just in the future, just keep in mind about the residential areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comment. Any other public comment this evening? Yes, sir.
Dave Kennedy, 36 Lookover Lane. I want to echo that. Thank you very much. I think it's obvious to the folks who've been following along with this that a lot of thought and planning and processing and work went into this, and I'm just really impressed with the deliberative way that the council has gone about this. It's a hot-button issue. Folks have opinions on it. But I'm really impressed with the way you guys, took it on and went through the whole process and came out with something that seems, very, very workable. I did have one question, though, just because I'm not familiar with the process. This is going to be advertised. Is that associated with a public comment period, or what's the purpose of the advertising, and is there a public comment period?
Yeah, so an advertisement period means that the full ordinance is available for public inspection, and we post it in the paper that we are contemplating voting on this, and that the ordinance has been drafted and is available for review. At this point, we are also able to release the full draft to the public, whereas usually when it's in deliberative draft format, we don't send it out to folks yet. And so, as Don said, from this point, while it's being advertised, it will be sent to Bucks Planning, and then it will come back to us with their comments. Typically, on something like this, we don't anticipate any major comments from them. And then the final vote would occur sometime in May. So it wouldn't become law until that vote in May. And at all points in the meetings until then, there would be ability for the public to comment.
There is an ability for the public to comment?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. One last question. How do I get a copy of that map?
So send an email to me. My email's on the borough website, or to Manager Johnson. We'd be happy to, or to Councilperson Carlson. I think Councilperson Carlson would share the whole slide deck, right?
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Also, because the map questions come up, for everyone here, if you go to the Bucks County map system of the county and you zoom into Yardley, there's it's a bit tricky, but there's a button there where you can turn on the zoning overlay, and it's kind of nice because you could zoom in and out and you can really see where those lines are. So I've used that, it can be helpful.
Yes.
What newspaper do you advertise in for public comment? Where do you find?
So the newspaper advertisement is kind of like an archaic system that we're just required to do. It's not really for the public to come comment. We always post our agendas on our website. And then we also have an email list of anyone who has ever sent us an email about short-term lodging will receive an email from Councilperson Stump saying, hey, we're talking about it. So if you want to be on that email list, email Councilperson Stump or Manager Johnson. We're also working on making our email blasts in the borough have more about what's going on in council news. We just have to thread the needle because we don't want people to unsubscribe who don't care about what's happening here, which we laugh, but there are a lot of people who don't want to know what we're doing in this room at 2 Tuesdays a month. So we hope to launch those bi-weekly email blasts this quarter.
So, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So if there's more changes, you'll email blast people, or you put it on Facebook or the newspaper, and people can know that changes are coming? And
So if there are any substantive changes from planning, I think we have to re-advertise. It's really, there will only be minor changes, or we have to start the whole process over again from this vote today.
where do you re-advertise?
Yes.
Where?
Oh, where? What paper do we advertise in?
Either the Advance of Bucks County or the Bucks County Courier Times is all that's left.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, as President Caroline has mentioned. I'm so first name, I can't.
You're good. You're good.
That the goal is not to advertise and then re-advertise, because that gets really expensive. So this is like 2 years of going to planning commission and being here and people coming here. And I regret that some people kind of only got here now because it's really late in the game. So it doesn't mean we can't change it, but we're not really going to want to keep doing that because it's kind of a waste of taxpayer money to keep re-advertising. It's not cheap either. So unless we really need to change something, we're really apt to do it if we can avoid it.
I'd like to say it's never too late to come to a council meeting.
Yeah,
That's true, and
absolutely.
I'm happy
We're
to
glad.
see new faces
We're
here.
glad for the folks who were engaged on this topic, and hopefully we'll stay engaged for future topics. We did. I think there was a question from you, sir, about how much public engagement. We've had several working sessions on this. Our working sessions are our second meeting every month, where we invite the public to just come and have. It's a lot less formal than this, and we roundtable discuss items that are we're kicking around and are still kind of in the greenhousing phase, and all of those feedbacks, both from council, mayor, Manager Johnson, and the public, and our code enforcement officer, our chief of police, they all got boiled down into what we have now. So do I feel like it's representative of the entire town? No, unfortunately not. But I feel like in terms of, compared to other items that we've considered, we'd have good public comment and public opinion on this one. All right, any other comments this evening?
One quick clarification.
Yes.
People who are grandfathered in, they are all subject to the new rules.
No, unfortunately, you can't enact ordinances or laws against people who are already doing something.
So they don't have to go back for a yearly renewal.
Mm-mm.
Do we have to grandfather them?
Yes.
Till they change ownership. Once they change ownership, we'll get them.
Yeah, and Mr. Griffin, do you want to explain grandfathering and why that is the way it is?
Yeah, just generally under the Pennsylvania Constitution, you have a due process right to any existing nonconformities that are attributable to a property. And just generally, you can't, pass like a post facto law that changes the standing or the use that already exists for a property. So once the zoning ordinance is passed, then going forward, those regulations apply. But anybody that's been doing something previously, they continue to enjoy that use.
And why that is, if somebody purchases a property where there's no regulation in place and they're operating, and it is that, they live off of the money that they get from that building, and then the laws change, we don't have the right to take away that income from them because the law didn't exist when they did their due diligence and purchased the property.
So looking at that bottom line with the detailed process for suspension, et cetera, doesn't apply.
No, but our ordinances apply. So our noise ordinances still apply. Our code enforcement ordinances with regard to occupancy and stuff like that still apply. So there are, we have gotten short-term lodging, we have issued citations for other reasons. So they're not above the law. They just don't have to apply in this manner. Good question. All right, any final questions on this? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the question. Again, we're voting to advertise. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we have one final item on our agenda, Certificate of Appropriateness 25-01-14 South Main Street ATM. I believe we have the applicant here this evening. I'm going to ask our solicitor to just provide a quick overview of why this is on our agenda, how did we get here, and then I would invite you to provide comment to us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So before you this evening is an application for a certificate of appropriateness for a freestanding ATM at 14 South Main Street. There's sort of a long history with regard to this proposal, but the applicant did obtain zoning relief from the Zoning Hearing Board on January 27th, 2025, to permit the freestanding ATM. The relief that they obtained was to allow an accessory structure that's not subordinate or incidental to a primary use. So that was under Section 27-612. And then also to permit the freestanding ATM to encroach into the side yard setback. So usually 6 feet is required. They obtained relief to allow a setback of 5 feet 2 inches. So as a result of basically complying with the variance relief from the Zoning Hearing Board, the freestanding ATM itself is a permitted use. So we're only here this evening with regard to a certificate of appropriateness pertaining to the design of the actual structure in the historic district. Now, the applicant, they appeared before HARB back on February 20th, 2025. At that time, HARB recommended denial of the certificate of appropriateness, but HARB is just a recommending body. The applicant went back and appeared before HARB again on March 20th, 2025. Once again, HARB recommended the denial of the certificate of appropriateness, but I just note that that action was taken without a quorum. So under the ordinances for Yardley Borough, basically where we're left this evening is as if HARB didn't make a recommendation to Borough Council, and it's presumed that HARB would have recommended approval if the applicant amended the application to include any recommendations from HARB. Now, unfortunately, HARB didn't provide much direction in this regard. Basically, they indicated that the structure is not appropriate for the historic district and that the materials used are not historic materials. HARB also took issue with the internal lighting with regard to the sign, but it's my understanding from discussions with the applicant's counsel that they've removed that request for internal illumination of the sign. So this evening, basically, Borough Council, your objective this evening is either to approve or deny the certificate of appropriateness. I just want to clarify that in considering this approval or denial, you can only consider the general historic and architectural nature of the district, and your review is limited to the appropriateness of the structure with regard to its architectural features. So this is general design, arrangement, texture, materials of the structure in relation to other similar structures within Yardley Borough. So I also note that in the event of denial, we do have to provide a written decision to the applicant, and that decision has to lay out what conditions they could change in order to bring it into conformity with the historic district, such that they could come back and possibly obtain approval. So with that, I know the applicant's represented by Mr. LeKind. The floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. If you don't mind, I'm just going to give you just the exhibits. I can send it to there's
Is there copies for everyone? Or?
copies, I didn't realize how big this was, so look at the copies. Well, thank you, I appreciate it. My name is Robert Fields Howe, and I'm representing Cameron Troilo on his
Just take one of
application on 14th Main Street in an alley. You're right. I'm assuming everyone can hear me, but if you can't, I'm happy to switch.
Yeah, that close to you.
What? Okay. Got it. Oh, okay. Got it. All right.
Now, it's just the red button. Yeah,
It was on.
oh, yeah, it was on. There you
Yeah.
go.
Real good.
Good start. Sure. All right. Look, I'm going to start with kind of what happened at R, because I think that's important for the council to hear, because it impacts my client. But before I get into the factual background of what happened, I think you'll understand when I'm done, if I can give you some framework, it was not only unfair, it was unconstitutional. And I'm hoping that this council will not follow those unconstitutional acts. The Constitution provides several rights to my client, but two are at issue here. First is the Equal Protection Clause under the 14th Amendment. And what that basically says is that we cannot treat similar situated folks differently. And now people may think, well, does that apply to landowners? And the Supreme Court has made clear that applies to landowners. We can't treat one applicant differently than another applicant when they're similarly situated. For lack of a better word, you can't have different strokes for different folks. Another constitutional issue that is issue here is due process. What due process basically says is, as we all know, is if the government is going to challenge you or you're in an adverse situation with the government, you need to know the government's position. It can't constantly be a moving target. And as you'll see when I go through the facts here, I think ARB ran afoul of both of those. And for those reasons, I would ask that you not follow ARB's recommendation and you allow the ATM to be placed in the alley on off Main Street. So first, everybody have exhibits? All right, to continue? Sure. I'm going to start with the January 1, 2020 application to ARB, or the COA. So they went in for an application after getting zoning approval to place an ATM in an alley off Main Street, right here down the street It's right by the community board, and it would have been tucked into the alley. It would not have been on Main Street. And if you look at Exhibit 2, which I presented to you, are pictures of Main Street. And as you can see, this is the location where the ATM would be. The ATM would be there by the community board. And if you flip through Exhibit 2, you can see, walking from either direction on Main Street, the ATM does not stick out, the ATM does not protrude, the ATM is not even visible from Main Street when you're coming from either direction. If you then look at what we presented as Exhibit 1 is the Bank of America ATM, which is prominently on Main Street. And if you flip through the pages, you will see that whether you're coming from the left or the right side, that ATM is visually present off of Main Street. My client went in after having zoning approval in January 2020 for the ARB's recommendation for the ATM and was surprised when the recommendation was no. The recommendation was that the materials, that basically the ATM would not be constructed of historical materials. Respectfully, I submit whatever the Bank of America ATM is made out of, those materials presumably didn't exist in the 1800s. And similarly, my client's ATM is going to be made out of the same type of things that a Bank of America ATM is going to be. That whatever materials make up ATMs, they're all the same. My client then wanted to work amicably with ARB. And so what they then did is they reached out to the board members because they were troubled by this. Because Cam, who's 87 years old, cannot fathom why Bank of America has an ATM, and when he as an individual applies for one, the answer from recommendation from ARB is no, because it's not going to be constructed of historical materials. So Mr. Troilo and his son, who's here with us tonight, CT, reached out to two board members. The first was a Mr. Foster, and then the second was a Mr. Taylor. Now, the conversations with Mr. Foster were oral. The communications with Mr. Taylor were via email. What happened in the conversations with Mr. Foster is Mr. Foster told Mr. Troilo, I'll just call it Junior, sorry, explained to him that, look, if you are willing to kind of move the ATM back a little bit from the community board, right? Similarly, if you get rid of that bike rack that's there, that's not my client's. And third, if you get rid of this light, that would make it all work out. Similarly, when Mr. Troilo, Sr., emailed with Mr. Taylor, and those emails I provided to you are in 6, 7, and 8, you will see the response there was basically, look, we think we can compromise here, we can work this out. Let's move the ATM back, right? It was the community board that was the issue. If you can understand from Mr. Troilo, that's a moving target because ARB denied it and said it wouldn't give the recommendation because it wasn't constructed of historical materials. Now when he talks to ARB members, it's a totally different reason, right? Now you need to move your ATM a little bit back, and he says, okay, I'll move the ATM back. After that is said and done, my client then also, you presumably have the application, and I discussed it with Andrew today. In the application is both where the location that was originally proposed for the ATM, and then also to accommodate ARB's unwritten request to move it back a little bit. And you will see both locations are in the application. My client then goes back to ARB in March of 2025, and now expecting, after communicating with the ARB members, that since it now agreed that it would relocate the ATM back, it got rid of the light, and they asked them if they would fix up the community board. They have no problem fixing up the community board, even though that's not an obligation of theirs. They expected now ARB would recommend the ATM for approval. However, the discussion got a little bit chaotic at ARB, and Mr. Taylor correctly pointed out, saying, well, how can we do this, right? How can we not allow this to go when we have a Bank of America ATM there, and now we have Mr. Troilo, who similarly wants to put an ATM there, and he quite frankly said, presumably maybe aware of equal protection due process, that this could get us sued. This is problematic. But again, ARB then denied the application or made a recommendation saying because it is not constructed of historical materials, right? So what we have here is this constant moving target, right? First, they go in and they say, it can't be approved because it's not constructed of historical materials. Then my client seeks to amicably work with ARB, and what they are told is, well, you need to move the ATM a little bit. My client then moves the ATM a little and shows that the ATM, where it could be on a relocated position. Then it comes back to ARB, and again, ARB says, nope, because it's not constructed of historical materials. I respectfully submit there is no justification to follow ARB's recommendation here. My client has zoning approval. There's an ATM right across the street. It would be both unfair and unconstitutional to follow ARB's recommendation.
Thank you, sir.
And if I could just start things off and just kind of to orient us here. I mean, just to be clear, you understand that the HARB is just a recommending body, correct?
I understand ARB's a recommending body, but obviously this is here, we're either following or rejecting ARB, right? I think it would be unfair if the ball gets moved again.
But at this point in time, you understand that there has been no violation of your client's rights with regard to the denial of this ATM, right?
That there's been no violation. I think that's, I don't know if I would necessarily concede that point yet, that there's been that there hasn't been a constitutional violation yet. I think certainly if he can't get the approval he's seeking here, specifically with the Bank of America, that would be problematic, though, for sure.
Okay, and you mentioned the Bank of America, but the Bank of America, you agree that it's covered in siding, that's in a color that matches basically the neighboring businesses, correct?
If you look there, I don't see the color of that ATM matching any of the structures because we proposed white, right? And the side of the building where we want to put the ATM in is white. If you look at our application, the ATM that we're proposing is white, and the side of the building is white.
Right. I guess the point I'm getting at is within your application that you marked as Exhibit 9, it states on one of the pages that shows the picture of it set back behind the board.
Yes.
It shows a photograph here, and at the bottom it says that you will change it to any color and that you will cover it with siding, but there was no specific color proposed and there was no siding proposed at any time to HARB, correct?
No. So that picture that you're looking at is the second picture that went into HARB. If you look in the application has the ATM painted in white. But then there became issues with color. So they submitted that as a secondary document for the second hearing, where basically they said, look, if you want the color change, we'll change the color. If you want the siding change, we'll change the siding.
So I guess that's what I'm asking is, tonight you're willing to put siding on the freestanding ATM, correct?
Look, my client, I don't know if siding is his siding something that was a historical construction material? It seems metal was.
Well, I mean, your point of comparison is the Bank of America ATM, and that has siding on it, correct?
Right.
And you're using that as an example of what's been approved in the past as a freestanding ATM, right?
Correct.
And then also there's a Wells Fargo building up the street at 225 South Main Street, right?
Correct.
And that building has siding on it, correct? And that building also has a freestanding sign that's made of wood and it's textured and says Wells Fargo on it, correct?
Correct.
So why didn't this application just set forth a freestanding ATM that's covered in the same materials as the Bank of America or the Wells Fargo Bank?
Because when we submitted our ATM first time around, the application, the only thing they said is it was not meeting it was not constructed of historical materials. Our ATM isn't constructed of historical materials. I mean, it's metal.
Right, and I understand that, but the ATM's in the historic district, and the applicant has to take some responsibility for the application that it proposes, and there's a number of businesses in the area that could serve as representation of what's acceptable in the historic district. So what I'm asking is, are you willing to put siding on the building, and are you willing to change the sign to be in conformity with the Wells Fargo Bank that's up the street?
Okay. So those aren't issues that ARB raised with us, right? ARB basically said it wasn't constructed of historical materials. Then ARB told us to change the location. ARB told us to remove the light. And then ARB told us to remove the bike rack, right? And so for my client, hopefully you can appreciate, it just seems the goalpost continues to get moved and moved and moved. If I can get a commitment that finally we're done here, if they put siding on the ATM and that they can come back and this will be approved, I would suspect that would bring an end to this issue. But I don't want to be back here in 2 weeks having now, it's another thing. My client is frustrated. He needs resolution of this tonight. And it can resolve, I guess, in one of two ways: an outright rejection, and then we'll proceed with what we have to proceed with, or it can proceed with on a conditional approval, but it is unfair to him after what happened in ARB to then think that, okay, we're going to add additional conditions here, and then you got to come back again and try it. He needs to have some certainty, and that's fair given what happened to him.
Yeah, and I'll move it over to Borough Council. I just wanted to kind of narrow the issue, and it sounds like he would be agreeable to putting siding on the ATM that matches the color of the neighboring building, and to also change the sign so that it's generally in conformity with the Wells Fargo sign up the street. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
That's,
and just for a procedural point of clarification, you don't have to go back to HARB if we approve it conditionally tonight with changes. So that would be it.
Yeah, that's correct.
Option that we have, though, if we so wanted to, as a council, could we send it back to HARB for
No, 'cause
detail?
we're outside of
Or
the
is this
time frame.
past?
Yeah, I mean, at this point in time, it's basically an approval or a denial. But if you denied it, you would have to give directions of how he could fix it, and then that would send them back through the process of going to HARB with an adjustment.
Here.
He would after that.
Did he meet our requirements or not? And based on that, we would then approve or deny subsequently.
Right, but then he's starting over where he's basically going to HARB and then going back here. I think we could do a conditional approval. The problem just becomes we need to have objective conditions that are actually enforceable.
That's what concerns me, that we're
Yeah.
not experts in being able to do that here. You know what I mean?
I think we're all experts in having eyeballs, and like
Yeah.
you can tell that you can't see this very well, and this
When you look
can
at,
say like
when
they're
you look
not the
at
same.
this versus this, okay, I mean, you're coming here, and I appreciate what you're doing, but you're also basically threatening us to say that you've been constitutionally violated if we don't approve it. We are really just looking at the ATM. We're not looking at the process. It's not what this vote is about,
Well,
right?
yes, I regret the back and forth that you experienced, and I think we need to look at this tonight separate from that, okay? And I am comfortable with what we have in front of us, pointing out the differences, and that I feel like that this Bank of America has done a good job in conforming with our historic district. Everyone knows the ATM is there and they frequent it, but if you didn't know it was there, you wouldn't know it was there. And I realize that's, for an ATM, you want people to know it's there, but three things I like about it: lack of excessive lighting, the siding that is in a historic color, and I also like that the branding is on the front of the ATM versus the street-facing side like you have in your rendering. So rather than the Wells Fargo facing South Main Street, it would face inward towards the alley and just be at the top like the Bank of America, so you would be standing in front of it to see it.
Also, on this one,
It's
the
under-
roof,
This was the original submission, correct, Mr. Terrell? Yeah, and so this is the one that I think that we were discussing tonight. If I'm wrong, tell me.
Correct, that is the one, yes.
Thank you.
And the rendering doesn't do you any favors because it looks like the whole thing's glowing. And I think a lot of people who
Right, right.
received it thought that it was a giant glowing orb ATM. So,
And if I could just respond to Mr. Finer, right? I think, Andrew, I'm sorry, forget your last name, Andrew.
Griffin.
And Mr. Griffin and I have obviously been adversarial, but respectfully adversarial, right? And I'm not here to threaten the council or anything like that. But I hope you can appreciate that my client, right, I have a job to do, right? And my client is, I believe, he's been through the ringer here a little bit on this, and I think there is some inequity and unfairness in the process that happened, and I hope you could appreciate from his perspective, right, why he feels like he doesn't want to just keep going through the process. There needs to bring an end to this, and if we can do it with a conditional saying, hey, do X, Y, and Z, and my client's acceptable with that, I think that's a great and positive way to bring an end to this, because I think going the litigation route, in the end, is in nobody's interest, right? I would like if we could resolve it tonight, but the marching order I have, understandably from him, is if they're going, either reject it, or if there's conditions, let's know specifically what those conditions are, and I think that's a positive path forward if we can go that route.
so I think if we get to a place that we could, like, this is a great guideline, because we understand that this does not look like a regular Bank of America ATM. Clearly, work has been done. Yes, it didn't exist in the 1800s, true. But this is a lot more appropriate for an architect, for a historical district than what we see here. So the question is, how do we describe to you tonight how to make that? Obviously, it's still a Wells Fargo, but like there are subtle details here, like this roof material, it doesn't have the branding on it. The branding is inside underneath, you know, and all those little things. And this also, Wells Fargo is written twice. It's written on the surface there and then also on the roof. So there are a lot of elements there. And I don't know how we go about this. It sounds like you're amenable to customizing this to fit the area. The question is, how do we describe that to you in a way that translates to Wells Fargo's specific branding? And because it's not just putting siding on it, is what I'm saying.
Right,
It's like probably 10 or 12 things here that we've got to kind of drill down to get to what feels equivalent.
Right. Well, first of all, my client's ATM is in an alley, right? And I've shown you the pictures, right? Regardless of which side of the street you're walking on, it is already further protected than that ATM, right? Because that ATM, what sticks out and that you can see is the Bank of America sign when you're coming down the street. This ATM, as it was originally proposed to ARB, is tucked in an alley and is shielded by an alley.
Yeah, but it's also right near a stone building, so it's not as simple as, well, it doesn't count because it's in the alley. It's in the historic district, and it's part of the sight line, and it's part of the, you know, people come here, they buy properties in the historic district. The properties are worth more because they're in the historic district, and we have to protect that, their assets. You know what I mean? So I hear what you're saying, but I think to move forward, I think we need to get to a similar level of concealment of what this is to be able to fit into the surroundings.
See, the discussion earlier was just maybe siding, right? And now it sounds like you would want more than just siding, right?
Because when I look at the totality of this one, it looks like it's more than just siding. That's the difference.
Right.
So just slapping siding on seems like, you know, lipstick on a pig kind of thing, where we want to get to substantially this level of fitting in, which I think we can get to. But I think the question is, we're not experts. How do we define what that is for you? Now, I don't have an answer. I don't have a question.
Well, you know, and that's kind of what I was getting at with the issue is that typically, you know, the applicant would submit, you know, the number of the color, the specific materials that are being provided, and have details so you know exactly what is going to be put there. And I do agree. It sounds like they're willing to do that and to bring this into compliance with the historic district. So I did offer to his counsel, you know, kind of take direction from us this evening and then revise your plans, resubmit them, and as long as they're in conformity with what we discussed, I would assume that you would ultimately get your certificate of appropriateness at the next meeting. It's just the problem you have is your plans describe what's being shown in these pictures, which is completely different than the changes that you're willing to make, and they describe technical details of an ATM that's not really what we're contemplating this evening.
Well, the ATM we're applying for is in the application, right? That got zoning approval. That is the one that went through ARB, right? ARB did not bring up any of the issues that we're hearing here. The only thing was that it's not constructed of historical materials. I think it's incumbent.
But in the one that we got, we still have the bright red. So these are the kind of things like that. It makes it pop versus it blends in. Right? Isn't the bright red one the final? It's got a bright red banner and then a bright red ATM
Perhaps
part.
that's the way it prints, but if you look at the application online, it's not that bright red. If you look at the PDF version of it.
Is it defined anywhere in the paperwork?
It's in the application.
Like the name of the color and?
The name of the color, yeah, the color scheme is.
I don't have it anywhere. I have the whole application open. It's all black and white, so.
Yeah, I mean, again, to me, this is a simple application with a simple solution.
Yeah, it's exactly like the piece of paper. Like let me just give you an example, okay? I don't know if you can see this, but I just Googled like Bank of America ATMs,
Right.
like what they look like in other places, and like the whole thing is red. So they got rid of all that, you know, and made the whole thing sort of this dark gray that's more of like stone-like. So I think what we're saying is you really need to like dial back the branding of the red and make this fit into a historic district, which has to do with siding, the size of the lettering, where the lettering is, lighting, you know, the whole thing. Because they clearly did, maybe there's a model for that in Wells Fargo. We can't be the first place that has had that issue. Maybe you could find that from Wells Fargo and just, use that.
Wells Fargo there's a very long-term expensive lease here at issue, and Wells Fargo is very frustrated with the town, right? Because of what happened at ARB, right? Wells Fargo just didn't fathom how it's written up as saying that it's not constructed of historical materials, then there's written emails saying something else. So Wells Fargo is, I don't know how much more patience I have from Wells Fargo on this issue because of its frustration from the
I'm
town.
just thinking that maybe they have something you could use to make this easier, because this probably happens occasionally.
Could Wells Fargo have an ATM in another historic district that maybe could use like a colonial red instead of like a bright red to kind of help it blend in better?
At this point, given what's happened, it's on my client to get approval for an ATM, right? And one of the reasons I can't answer your question too is what happened at ARB with Wells Fargo, right? There's issues there.
Right, but you're right now, you're before the body that actually approves the certificate of appropriateness.
Right.
And what we're telling you is, look, the ATM, it's permitted. The freestanding ATM is permitted. You have the zoning relief, you are allowed to have the ATM. Nobody's trying to shut down the ATM. Nobody's saying you can't have the ATM. All we're saying is the design of it needs to comply with the historic district. And the direction you've been given is we want siding that covers the ATM, similar to what's occurring with the Bank of America. That's a simple change to the plans that just shows siding and that the color's in conformity with the neighboring building. Then if you go just up the street to 225 South Main Street, there is a Wells Fargo bank that has siding on it and also has a sign that is a more subdued color of red and has wood and is textured. And if that becomes the sign that's put on this particular proposal, and the plans are changed to show that, I don't think anybody here from Borough Council is going to take issue with it. Nobody's looking to pull the rug out from under you. It's just the application that you submitted makes no attempt whatsoever to have an ATM that's in conformity with the historic district. And if you walk up and down the street, I mean, look at Wawa, they have a wood sign. Typically, they have bright illuminated lights. There's a Starbucks. Typically, they do the same thing. But when you look, same thing, wooden sign, CVS. I mean, there's a lot to draw inspiration from. And these are easy, simple changes, very simple changes. It's not complicated at all. And that's why I'm kind of taking issue with this idea that, like, I have no direction whatsoever. And it's like, well, your application made no attempt to bring this into conformity with the historic district. And the guidance you're giving is very simple changes. We just need something to put in the certificate of appropriateness that, okay, we've approved this. And then when you build it, we can say, okay, it's in conformity. If we just give you general guidelines and then you show up with your certificate of appropriateness, how do we enforce that it's actually in conformity without having the details? That's the problem.
All right, you would agree what you're articulating was not a basis for ARB not approving.
But it doesn't matter. They're just a recommending body. You are now here for the first time asking for approval. It doesn't matter if they denied it. If they said yes or no, you're still sitting here today asking for the approval of the certificate of appropriateness. You're in the same position regardless of what they did. I'm not saying their role is meaningless, because usually they narrow the issues and get you to a place where hopefully it's ready to go and we can just vote on it by consent. But unfortunately, I think because of the nature of your application, to be honest with you, where there's no attempt made at all, they didn't know how to give you direction, and I don't know what occurred there, but it doesn't sound like at any point in time you showed up with, here's my ATM, it's covered with siding, it's similar to the Bank of America, my sign is similar to the wood signs you see throughout the borough. That just never happened.
Well, if you look at email 6, 7, and 8 that I provided you, none of this conversation that we're having.
We're having it now.
All right, well, why can't you conditionally approve it and say do X, Y, and Z then?
Because what I'm saying is we can give you those conditions here today, but it's going to require you to amend your plans, come back before us so we can look at them and say, okay, looks good, approved.
So you cannot give a conditional approval that says do X, Y, and Z after all that we've been through.
If you are able to tell the Borough Council the style of siding that you're using, the color that you're using, the style of sign that you're using, yes, we could do that, but you're just not at that point.
Okay, so tell me what color siding you want.
Can I just ask you a question, solicitor? Because I think one of my concerns here is that, like, when I look at Bank of America and their ATMs, they're very loud and total red. What was done here is they scaled all that back. There's actually no red here at all. There's just the sign once, and even the unit, doesn't have any branding on it. I think we're being asked to be consistent. Fine. But if we do anything more, if we loosen that leash any bit, the next one will come along and say we did it for them. Now we can have a red roof too. So I want us to be very clear that we shouldn't go, we agree to it, that we're not going to go beyond what we've allowed in terms of how this fits into the historic district.
Right, and that's why I'm saying that this is as simple as just amend your application, show us plans that show a proposal that's in conformity with the historic district based upon the direction you've gotten. So we want
Why can't you
siding.
put that in writing?
Because we're doing it orally. I can send you an email after the hearing to say,
I don't understand, because he doesn't want to be back in the situation that he was with ARB, where he was told one thing, and then the reasons for the denial was actually something different.
Won't have to go back to.
You're coming back.
Go back to Hart.
I understand we're going back here, but why can't
So for
I
me,
get a
if
specific
you
list?
want to guarantee we're going to approve it, do everything exactly like the Bank of America.
Do this and
No
come back.
red, exactly same siding, exactly same material they're using for their siding, overhang with very low recessed lightings that are hardly illuminated. If you stray from that at all, even 1 iota, you run the risk of us denying it in 2 weeks. But if you come back with this exact thing, it will be, like, I think we will approve it. We have no grounds not to. There's something already occurring like that. If you want to change from the dark blue to a gray, so you're not exactly the same, great. But anything beyond that with extra logos or bright flashy colors, like, it sticks out like a sore thumb.
that's a huge difference when you're looking at them.
We're not going to approve this.
We take 5 minutes. I just want to speak with the client.
Sure.
Are we allowed to discuss or we have the whole?
Yeah, sure. We'll enter a quick recess.
All right. So I have a proposal to see if this, my client is willing to basically take its application and give you a picture of just this, right? And say this, it's going to cut it out. It's going to say this is what the ATM will look like, right? The Bank of America ATM. He will literally, his application next week, if we could get a commitment that if he comes in with just this, that would be approved. A conditional rejection saying that, look, if you come in with just exactly that would be approved.
I have a question on that, I'm sorry. Looking at that size, because that's sort of like a shed with the ATM in the center of it, and I know the area that you're going to put it, and I don't think it's going to fit.
No, our ATM is only 42 inches wide, 42 inches.
He's just saying the siding.
Oh, you mean, oh.
So you would submit that as a sample and then say, we'll change the logo and we'll change the size, but this is the.
This is it. We'll say this is it. The one thing is, given the issues with Wells Fargo, if we can get Wells Fargo back to engage, that'll say Wells Fargo. If it doesn't say Wells Fargo, it'll say SunTrust, whatever bank that, we're trying to.
Oh, I see. They may not want that once you.
Well, Wells Fargo is very frustrated, and we're trying to not have Wells Fargo walk away on us, right, because of what happened on ARB. So, but if we can keep Wells Fargo engaged, great, it'll say Wells Fargo there. But if it doesn't say, if it's not Wells Fargo, it'll be whatever bank.
It'll just say logo here.
Yeah, whatever bank, whatever logo here, right? And so the only thing we would ask is that we will basically take this to size, put this in the application, and the only thing here, it'll just say, bank name.
And would you be willing to only have one logo instead of two, because your current has two in the proposal? Okay. Got it.
It's going to be this. I mean, for the size.
So I would actually say during the recess, we were looking through the photos, and these are the photos that you provided for us. There's 8 photos of the Bank of America ATM. What's interesting to me about this is that of these 8 photos, only 3 of them I can tell that's an ATM. In the other 5 photos, it so blends in with the background. So I would actually say that the photos that you provided do not help your case, and that these are not the same thing.
Well, I have an alley.
Most people today they find
Yeah, I
it
mean,
through their.
he said that he's willing
made
to.
it very nice.
He said that he's willing to make it match.
Don't know why.
Sounds good. I do want to allow the public to speak, and
Sure.
then we can just get, so you asked consensus from us that we would approve it next time.
Yeah, you would be looking for approval at the April 15th working session?
I'd be looking for approval on the April 15th session, right? Saying a conditional approval, it matches like this. And I'd really appreciate if you give it to me, because I'm supposed to go on a cruise with my family on April 15th, and I'd like for CT to be able to come in without me. And Cam is going to make me come if we
If you can submit it to me beforehand, just so I can take a look at it and kind of give you that assurance before the meeting, that would probably help you. But I think in general, it sounds like we're on the same page.
Yes.
Is that the color that you would like it to be?
I don't mind if it's a different historic color, like if it's like a stone-like color, if you want it to be different. I think that one was at the color, because if you look directly at the building across the street, there's that one. See, it blends in with it. That's why it's that color.
Do we have a guideline of historic colors?
No.
I would say if it sort of is the same color as the neighboring building, that seems to make sense. But I think we should just give him a color so we're done with it.
So
Yeah.
my life, and I think everybody's life, goes easier if I just can go back and say, hey, you do this.
Yeah.
They've basically said, they've conditionally
A stone
approved it.
gray, a stone brown, a
Right.
blue.
A blending color.
Yes.
Right, yes.
Blend-in color.
No, bright red.
Probably a stone brown, because they're stone front.
Yeah.
Where it is.
Up against the white wall.
Yeah, so if you
You're
want,
walking this way and looking at a historic building, that the
one to the
stone
left is
wall
stone, and the
yeah.
one to the right is white. So
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
I mean, they'll do this color, but it's going to stick out more on that white wall. You follow me?
Yeah.
Right?
No, you don't have to do the blue. It just it can't be like a
No,
bright
he's saying because
color.
it's going to be dark color up next to a white wall. You're gonna,
Right, see?
It's not going to be hidden. We understand.
Yeah, right. So, and if you want the dark color, we'll do the dark color. You want pink, we'll do pink, right? Whatever.
Light grayish, like
Light gray,
blending,
stone brown.
Stone brown, something to blend in that wall.
Like something stone-like, it sounds like.
No white. No white.
I don't think white.
I don't think they're looking white, and I don't think they're looking bright red, but, historic bright red.
Okay.
We're all saying the same thing.
Sounds like a
But
neutral.
Before we, does that sound good to everybody? Thumbs up? Okay. Does the public have any comment this evening on this? Couple of people, yes, Mr. Mansell first. We'll allow the public to come up.
I think it would be of benefit for everybody for you guys to provide I build things for a living, for you guys to be able to provide actual architectural drawings and plans of this. I think just photoshopping an image doesn't suffice. I think you should have to explain and show what it's actually doing, just like you would have for any other zoning or building permit, to make it an improvement. It's not a hard thing to do. I mean, the photoshopping you did is clearly not great, so I think you guys should try to have to provide some sort of architectural design.
And look,
Go ahead.
Sorry, I can speak to that for clarity. They did provide those types of plans to the zoning hearing board, and those have been provided to us. So there is the actual like technicals of design and details of this ATM itself. We're just asking put siding on it, basically. Yeah, so we do have those plans that show the details of the actual ATM.
Technical drawing should also include what the siding is and the actual structure of it, because it's going to be structured differently.
And I think that's what he's willing to provide us through the pictures is this siding, this color.
At this point, so just for everybody's clarification, they first applied in January of last year. I'm okay with a Photoshop picture, but to our HARB process and what's provided to council in the future, it's something that we can look at for sure. Public comment over here.
Well, I was just essentially going to say the same thing as he was saying. I do 3D modeling for video games, and there's a whole business, and there's a lot of people who do this, where they actually construct models of what is being planned. It could be a warehouse, it could be a building, a house, whatever. So it would allow you to actually look at the model almost as it would be in life, with a variety of different colors, different paint schemes, things like that. It's not usually a heck of a lot of money to do that. There's graphics companies that will do that. The model itself may actually already exist. There's companies like CG Trader and whatnot that actually have pre-built models, hundreds of thousands of pre-built models. So you can actually get a modeler almost exactly what you want and drop it into a photo or complete a model, you know, you can model your buildings and you'll use that photo. So you get a better idea of what it is you're getting into.
Right.
Yeah, so you're volunteering to model this? But we have like elevations, so I think what we're talking about here is they're gonna take the facing, the way that appears, and translate it to the existing elevations of what we have. So based on the uniqueness of the situation, I think that's gonna work here.
There's more
Hold on,
schematics
did you have-
on ATM than anyone would ever want to look at.
Yes.
It's kind of like the
saw
skin
that.
is changing.
Councilperson Applebaum, did you have a
Well, just
comment?
for the record, I'm perfectly happy with a two-dimensional drawing and picture, and as long as it, is in the same, vein as what we're seeing here. I don't need any, personally, I don't need anything.
I would say, in the interest of making sure that you get your approval on the 15th, if you can provide something to Mr. Griffin this week, he can, if any wires got crossed, missed in translation between us, he can provide you feedback before the next meeting, like, no, I think they meant this. And so you can provide that all in our packet for next time, and you don't have to be here. So that would be the way it would.
This is something you can craft up tomorrow, right?
I'll talk to my guy,
Okay,
but
yeah.
in the next couple days.
Okay, yep.
All right.
Okay. So the understanding I can report back is, look, as long as it looks like that, the Bank of America ATM, he'll be able to get his approval on the 15th.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
No, we just have consensus.
There's consensus for that. We can't
Yes.
guarantee it because we all have to vote for it, but
Yeah.
you're getting consensus for us.
You know our names if we go back on our work.
There were
Anything?
dinosaurs, by the way, when you said.
Any final items? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned 9:27.